and welcome to another exclusive interview by Recovery Today magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com, where first and foremost, we're a magazine of hope. Whether you're considering addiction recovery for yourself or a loved one, or you're actively in recovery a short while or many years, you'll find information on all topics related to addiction, recovery, codependency, and living a happy, successful, sober life at Recovery Today. My name is Sherry Gaba, and I'm the editor of Recovery Today, and I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing another great guest today. Kate B. is the founder of the Sober School, where she coaches women through early sobriety and helps them navigate alcohol-free living without feeling deprived or miserable. Kate lives near Manchester in the UK. Growing up in the era of Sex and the City and Bridget Jones, Kate B. believed her drinking was simply what successful independent women did. After all, she was a journalist and TV producer for the BBC. Drinking after work was how people socialized, except she was tired of feeling hungover and ashamed about what felt like more drinking than was healthy. When Kate decided to get sober, she was disappointed to find the only real support was through AA. She attended a few meetings, but left feeling like she didn't fit because she was getting sober before her drinking had negatively impacted her work or relationships. But there was no middle ground. It seemed like you either didn't have a real problem or you had to be a full-blown alcoholic to get help. That's why Kate founded the Sober School, a coaching program that helps women feel inspired and empowered by their decision to quit drinking. She helps women who are ready to start living their best life, learning how to do it without a glass of wine in hand. Kate's course helps women understand why they really drink so they can change their relationships with alcohol for good. And again, Kate lives near Manchester in the UK. Hi, Kate. Thank you for doing this today.
No problem. Thank you for having me on. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate it. And I love this idea. I think we call it gray area drinking or high bottom drinking. So tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me more about your story and why you felt like when you walked into AA, you couldn't relate.
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting that we're quite familiar with this term gray area drinking now.
Yes.
And I feel that we're hearing a lot more about it. But 6 years ago, or 6.5 something years ago, when I stopped drinking, we didn't seem to talk about that so much. Yeah. And I felt really lost. I could see that, yeah, as you sort of read out there, I was drinking too much and it was making me unhappy. I didn't have an off switch. I felt out of control. It was negatively impacting my health and my happiness and my mental health. Mm-hmm. And yet, when I looked around for help, the only option seemed to be going to rehab, going to AA, which I did try. And, you know, perhaps I was just unlucky on the day I went. I went to a couple of meetings where I heard some quite extreme stories. And in many ways, that was exactly what I wanted to hear, because I wanted to reassure myself that, oh, I was nothing like them, so I was absolutely fine.
Right.
But it did sort of reinforce this sense of, oh, actually, Kate, your drinking isn't that bad. What are you worrying about? And it allowed me to continue for a bit longer in this unhappy place where I felt as if I wasn't normal, but I wasn't bad enough, for want of a better phrase. Uh-huh. And yeah, I think sometimes I look back and I think it's just real luck that something inside me thought, this isn't good enough. You do need to change, because all the help around me wasn't really supporting me to make that change. So yeah, and that's why I do what I do now, really, because I want to help other people stop drinking, even if alcohol is only making them a tiny bit unhappy. I'm really passionate about sharing the message that you can live a full and happy life without alcohol. You don't need to wait until things have got really bad.
Well, do you consider yourself a quote alcoholic, or do you just kind of stay away from that word, or do you use the term I abused alcohol? But I mean, because my understanding is, you know, when you don't have the on-off button, it most likely is quote the disease of alcoholism. But I think it's a personal choice to make that decision to call yourself an alcoholic. So how do you identify yourself?
Yeah, I don't personally use that word. It's partly because it's something that just never really resonated with me. And also in my work at the sober school, I find that seems to frighten people off because they're
Mhm.
so scared of being associated with that word.
Yeah.
So I really go out of my way not to say the A word.
Mhm.
I guess when it comes to my drinking, I would just say that, you know, alcohol is an addictive substance, a toxic, mind altering one that is incredibly well marketed, and it's promoted by all the people around us, including our parents. It's the only drug you have to justify not taking. And yeah, I did get addicted to it, but I don't really think it's that surprising. I actually think it's quite abnormal when people drink alcohol and they do so with ease and don't have a problem with it. The odds just aren't stacked in your favor.
Yeah. Well, so the next question would be, what are your thoughts about alternative recovery programs such as yours? Because um, in some ways, could it be watering down the original founders of the 12-step program, or perhaps this is a way out. This is a really slippery slope for someone who really is a alcoholic. I mention him a lot. I mean, my ex-husband was what I would call a real alcoholic. And when he drank, I mean, they were bar fights and car accidents and not knowing where he was and blackouts and everything in between. So if you know I mean, my concern is that somebody will say, I mean, I guess the question is your school to get somebody sober or to moderate their drinking?
No, it's so I don't encourage moderation at all.
Okay.
The people who come to work with me have already tried moderation, and if it worked for them, it would have worked for them.
Yeah.
Um, I think where I feel I sit on the scope of things, I think we need a whole range of treatment options, and different things work for different people. And if anyone ever says to me, "Hey, do you think I should go to AA? Should I go to a meeting?" I always say yes, because you don't know what you're missing if you don't go. And if you meet some amazing people in your area and you get so much out of that face-to-face contact, which I can't provide online, and there is something about meeting people face-to-face which is really powerful, you don't want to miss out on that if it's something that's going to help you. But on the whole, I'd say at least half the people who I end up working with have tried some kind of meeting, and for whatever reason, they didn't feel at home there.
Yes.
And so, but they're still looking for help. They still need some support and accountability. And so I think I am providing something that people just aren't getting elsewhere.
Yes. No, I do understand. I mean, I have that my specialty is addiction and trauma. And when I'm a psychotherapist, and when people come in, a lot of people just are not ready to go to a 12-step meeting. And so, my whole thing is, start where the person is. And I would agree that there's so many young people today that the 12 steps doesn't always align with those people. And yet right now it's the only statistics we have that it's the only thing that seems to work, because there just hasn't been enough studies done on all these alternative programs. So I would agree with you that we need, different things for different people and different issues. And then another issue is, some people have abused alcohol in their lives. So that doesn't mean that they're a quote alcoholic, or it doesn't mean that they're going to forever be a problem drinker. Maybe they've gone through some loss. I know when my dad died, I was probably drinking wine at night more than I should have, but that was sort of a situational abuse kind of situation. And I know we don't really talk about that either. There's like no quote great, right? There's no like, and in the DSM-5, which is our statistical manual that where we diagnose, there is alcohol abuse, which is not necessarily alcoholism, the disease itself. So I like what you're doing. So what does the program consist of?
Thanks. It's a 6-week online course with daily lessons, for want of a better word, and that might be a mixture of videos or written exercises to complete and things to listen to. And we go through a whole range of things, from practical tips on how to deal with cravings and, what you can do to look after yourself if you're struggling, or just learning how to manage your life and manage your emotions without this crutch of alcohol. Because I think that fundamentally, many of us who drink, we just didn't learn how to deal with our emotions that well, or we found this thing that seemed to be working really well until it wasn't. So there's a lot of that. But we also, a lot of the program is based on cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, where we look at what individuals think they are benefiting from when they drink. Like, what are they gaining from alcohol? And then it's about examining whether that really is happening, or whether it's actually a bit of an illusion, whether we are turning a blind eye to some things and it's kind of smoke and mirrors, and actually you probably feel the same way in that situation no matter what was in your glass. And that's the kind of thing that I think we're not talking about in regular everyday life, particularly here in the UK, where alcohol is so romanticized and glamorized, and it's at the heart of every social event.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, why do you think it's so glamorized in the media? Like, what is the benefit? I guess money, or, the only go-to that people know about, really, to deal with their feelings. And that was another question, was what do you think is underneath the feel? What are the feelings that people are sort of just trying to distract from? One of the things that I teach is all about codependency, because for me, one of the things that really was always the trigger for my ex-husband was his need to please and approve, get approval and validation, not being able to say no, not having boundaries. And so I think codependency, along with fear, are one of the biggest things that underlie addiction and alcoholism. What do you think underlies addiction?
I think that's great. Yeah, I think fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, and lack of self-worth. I think for one reason or another, many of us don't feel that we are good enough, and alcohol can be a great distraction from that. And when you look at other addictive behaviors, whether it is going on social media too much, or eating too much, or gambling, it all comes from the same place, doesn't it? From trying to escape what we're feeling in that moment.
Right.
And I think our culture is very much geared around, if you have a bad day, do something to change how you feel, rather than sitting with those feelings and learning to deal with them. So
that's why I always say to someone, before you pick up that drink, kind of walk yourself through that. And can you sit for a moment and just be uncomfortable, or, find something else that gives you purpose. But sometimes just like just sitting in your emotions is really okay. And I think we're taught, no, it's not okay, that pain, we should run away from pain. And at any cost, whether it's shopping, food, sex, love, codependency, drugs, gambling. I mean, we're taught to distract from those feelings. And do you think that in the UK, that's more the culture? Because we're kind of a woo-woo kind of culture here in America. So I'm thinking, I saw Rocket Man last night about Elton John. And I don't know if you saw the movie.
Not yet, no.
Definitely something to see. And, you looked at his parents, very stiff upper lip, and just very ignorant about really what was going on with their son, but more the stiff upper lip thing. Just really kind of, I said, oh my God, that seems like English culture, sort of.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be generalizing when I say this, but I do think, we still have an element of that stiff upper lip, and not showing our emotions, and certainly not being in touch with our emotions. And so I think that for years, centuries, alcohol has been the way that we do access certain emotions. And then if we say things or do things that are a bit, too touchy-feely or emotional, we can just blame it on the alcohol. So I think we, in England, we do have a culture that's built around only being able to access certain parts of ourselves when under the influence of alcohol. And I do notice that a lot of my American friends are just better at dealing with stuff. And you, I think you are a lot quicker to seek out help as well, and to, improve yourselves.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think there's still, again, it's generalizing. Not everybody is that way, but I mean, my mother's an alcoholic, and she's presently not drinking because she's living in a community where there is an alcohol, but she has dementia. But she, we started talking about my dad yesterday, and my dad died 4 years ago, and it was just so interesting. She's like, "Well, I don't want to talk about that. That's too painful." And then she got angry at me, and I'm thinking, wow, that's okay. And I said to her, Mom, pain is okay. It's okay to talk about good memories and feelings. And if you cry, and she was just like, no, 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 I do not want to feel that pain. And so probably that's most likely one of the reasons why she became an alcoholic, because she just did not want to cope with pain. Pain was just
Wow.
like something that was okay.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, what would you say to that person who is the kind of low bottom drinker and says to you, well, I just want to moderate. I just want to this is what I'm told all the time, is I just want to drink like a normal person. That's like every alcoholic's wish. I've never met one that doesn't come into my office and ask me that question. So how would you answer that question?
Yeah, it's a hard one, and it's hard to turn around to say to someone, and then say to someone, that's probably not going to happen. So one of the things I try and suggest to people is, you've already tried moderating a lot of times. Can you make a list of all the things you've done, all the rules you've created to try and keep a lid on this, and what's worked and what hasn't? But also, rather than kind of fixating on moderation, if you can take a complete break from alcohol for a defined period of time and just really throw your all into that, keep alcohol off the table, and and really throw yourself into enjoying this break from alcohol, then when you get to the end of that break, you can perhaps stop and reflect on how much energy did it take to not drink compared to how much energy am I using trying to control my drinking.
Right.
And for most people, actually trying to control and moderate, that is taking up huge amounts of energy, and it isn't even making you happy because you're never fully satisfied.
You never get that first high, that first buzz that you're always seeking. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I work a lot with love addicts. It's the same idea. You keep looking for that perfect romantic situation of that first high that you had when you fell in love. And it's, you're searching and searching and searching. And, it really begins with a relationship with yourself. That's really the truth, whatever that addiction is. Well, how can people find you, Kate?
Thanks. I'm the best place to come and find me is at thesoberschool.com. I write a blog nearly every week, so I've got quite a few tips and things like that in there. And I'm also on social media, just at the Sober School on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
So you do a lot of Facebook Lives?
No, I don't do many Facebook Lives actually, but I'm on Instagram a lot more. Instagram is where my
Your base
heart is at the moment.
Yeah. Videos on there so people can hear you talk, or
I've got videos on there, and just a mixture of things from tips and quotes and stuff about my life, really.
Oh, that's great, Kate. Well, thank you for what you're doing. And is there anything you'd like to say to kind of leave the interview with, any kind of hope or inspiration?
Yeah, I think the note I'd like to end this on is that I think sobriety is nothing to be embarrassed about or ashamed about. And I was embarrassed about it for a really long time, and I wish I hadn't been, because now I see alcohol-free living as something that is absolutely awesome. It's added so much to my life, so much pride and joy and freedom. And I'd really love more people to know that it is a good thing. It's not it's not going to be the end of your life, the end of your world, which is what I feared it was. It
Yeah.
is truly brilliant.
Oh, that's amazing. That's fantastic. Well, I was just thinking as you said that, I think in New York, they're starting to open up bars that are alcohol free. And I'm like, this is just awesome. Like, I'm older than you. So for you, for young people today to have all of these different options and to get on social media and meet people like you, and, there's no, I don't want to say there's no excuse, but there are so many options out there, and just try it. Try what you like. If you don't like it, try something different. Give it a try. If what you're doing, like we say, is not working, try something different. So
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you so much. And thank you everybody for another amazing interview at Recovery Today magazine.